On December 12th, 2021, the European team Acend just upset the reigning Masters Berlin champions, Gambit eSports, to become Valorant's very first world champions. But fast forward just 4 months later, and half this championship roster had been released, and the team that was once the best in the world couldn't even make it out of a regional tournament. So what happened? Well, this is the story of the match that broke Valorant's first world champions, Acend. After coming off their 2021 champions win, the entirety of the roster decided to stay together in order to hopefully repeat their success into 2022. But when looking at this roster throughout the 2021 season, it didn't necessarily always look World Championship caliber, as they had some large blunders on the international stage that were overlooked after they won champions, such as their blown lead of 12-7 against 100 Thieves in the quarterfinals of Masters Berlin that eliminated them early, as well as missing out on the first Masters event by falling out of challengers against Team Vitality, which actually caused Acend to switch IGLs from Cold Demented to Bone Cold, with Zeke entering to finalize the roster that would end up going on their World Championship run. While they did end the season on top, there were some serious cohesion and skill issues that still needed to be ironed out going into 2022 if they want to go on another hot streak. But these weren't the only obstacles in their way going into the season, the other being the introduction of two new agents jumping into the meta: Chamber and Neon. Chamber was released prior to Champions, but got a 0% pick rate, so 2022 would be the real first time teams would start implementing him into their comps. Along with Chamber came Neon, who was released just prior to the start of the first Challengers event of the season. These two new agents right away looked viable, and it was obvious that to be a successful team this year, teams will need to start utilizing them sooner rather than later. This means that Jet players like Acend, who dominated all last year, needed to become flexible fast and be able to shift to another role that the meta demanded, or they just might fall behind the curve. Though with the entirety of the roster and coaching staff getting another year to play together, they were definitely favorites to make it to the first Masters of the year in Reykjavik. Acend was sorted into Group B, along with Fnatic, G2, Guild, BBL, and Papara. Comparing this group with Group A, it seemed clear that Acend lucked out in the draw, as teams like Gambit and Team Liquid have proven they belong on the international stage, as well as an up-and-coming roster of FPX, who would go on to win a Masters event just a handful of months later. So in Group B, Acend were the clear favorites to move on in this weaker group. Even if they don't have a perfect group stage, all they need to do is make the upper half of the standings to advance to the playoffs, which should be a piece of cake for the reigning world champions. And even better, they were matched up against the perceived weakest team in the entire tournament, the Turkish team Papara Supermassive, to start off their season, who they defeated already twice in Masters Berlin last year, with relative ease only dropping one map. On the first map of the season, Acend looked like a completely different team than just 3 months ago. Quickly onto Ascend's defensive side, they fell down 4-8, with Papara blowing both Keyless and Zeke off of site with ease, as they collectively went 12-22, which is something that you wouldn't want for your site anchor and initiator on defense. The team's support players that were so critical for Ascend's success last season just didn't seem to be able to consistently hit their shots when they needed to, which was a common problem at the beginning of last season before the whole roster started to heat up on their championship run. Along with their poor performance, CNET on Jet also didn't light up the scoreboard. While his aim didn't take a hit, some of his decision making didn't look as wise, as he was unable to have a big impact on defensive rounds, being traded out consistently and not providing the superstar fragging he usually does. In the second half, CNET returned to form though, carrying his team to an overtime with 20 kills and only 8 deaths on the attack. Zeke and Keyless continued to struggle, but in the first overtime, they actually played pretty clutch and helped Ascend win the first map. On Ascend's map pick of Bind, they were able to cruise to a victory with their play looking as clean as last year, making the first map Ascent just look like a warm-up map for them, rather than a legitimate near upset. But now with the first map under their belt, the real test for the world champions begins now. And who better to face than their former IGL, Coldamenta's newest project, Guild eSports. With young talent such as Leo, Trex, and Safe, Coldamenta has a promising team, but Ascent are still the favorites as Guild is still really green against tier 1 talent like Ascent. The map begins on Acend's map pick of Split, and yet again, Acend falls down quickly, 3-9 on their attack with no one on Acend really showing up. Killis gets only 1 kill to 10 deaths. Cnet gets 2 first kills, but his team is never able to convert the player lead to a round victory. Acend are able to start stringing some rounds together on the defensive side thanks to some slow play from Guild and 2 critical early rounds. They were able to activate the 9-3 curse to win Split 13-11. Again, another close map victory, but they've been consistently able to pull it off so far. Something that happened a lot last year as well. So this is just kind of the formula Acend's been kind of working with, and it's worked out so far. But on Guild's map pick of Breeze, Guild were able to run away with it quickly, going up 8-4 in the first half, while Acend brought it closer, moving it to 11-9. They were unable to find a way to stop safe on Jet, going 14-1. While this wasn't a terrible loss on the other team's map pick, Acend on the attack tried to utilize Chamber, as Cnet switched to him. Unfortunately, he couldn't find a good way to break through the defense of Guild consistently, like he did with Jet. Nevertheless, we moved to a deciding map 3 of Fracture. This allowance by Acend to let through Fracture as a deciding map 3 seems odd when looking at how terrible they looked last year on the map, as they could never find a comp that worked with the skills of the team, as Cnet could never figure out Jet on either side of the map, as well as being unable to switch to the more effective Raze. But once the agent selection went through, it was obvious that Acend has been trying new comps, with Cnet moving to Chamber, while Starzo switching to Jet as the main entry, completely excluding Zeke's Raze. So let's see how it goes. And only 30 minutes later, Guild won the map 13-4, handing Acend a 1-1 record in the group stages. So while Cnet on Chamber didn't look too bad of a call, every other role was completely screwed up. Starzo was unable to consistently entry at a high level, getting as many first kills as first deaths. Really, they were only able to win the first pistol and eco, being unable to put together any solid strategy to succeed. While this was a tough loss, it was something that they were used to from the trials and tribulations that were last season. At 1-1, they were still very much thought of as a playoff team, but with their hardest challenge of Fnatic, they needed to prove they still had it. Unfortunately for them, a number of players throughout the tournament caught COVID before the matches, causing them to postpone that week of matches to the last week of matches in the group stages, a day before their final match of the season against BBL. And with that, their next matchup would be with G2, which is a much more favorable matchup to regain their footing in the standings. Acend were able to win the match 2-1 with solid performances from all 5 players. Now at 2-1, they only need 1 win out of the final 2 matches to get into the playoffs. And this is where the back-to-back matches would occur. On October 12th, they would face Fnatic. Then less than 24 hours from the end of that game, they'd face off against their week 5 opponents, BBL, to finish the group stages. While Fnatic is a tough opponent, BBL should definitely be a cakewalk, as they had been 2-0'd by G2 during their first match of week 5, allowing Acend 2 opportunities to punch their tickets to playoffs. So first, Acend must face the revitalized Masters Reykjavik runners-up, Fnatic. With the map pool not looking that favorable, they had to let Haven through, which Acend had been consistently banning throughout the tournament, in order to avoid Fracture. And if we know anything about a team led by Boaster and Mini, Haven is their playground, not even giving Acend a chance to get into the map, winning 13-4. But because Fnatic got to pick their favorite map, Acend got to pick one of their favorites, with Ascent. And even though they almost lost their first time on the map against Papara, this map was one of the key reasons why they were able to go on their World Championship run in the first place, winning against teams such as Gambit and Envy, who would become Optic Gaming, as Bonecold is able to be an effective strategist, along with Cnet being an unstoppable force on the op. Acend starts the map hot with 3 round wins in a row, before Fnatic strikes back with 3 of their own during the first few rifle rounds, as Fnatic's retakes look super clean, but Acend was able to pick up a critical round 7 to regain the lead. Through the final 5 rounds, Fnatic and Acend trade win streaks to end the first half at 6-6. For Acend, this is not ideal, as even with a superstar performance from Cnet, they're still getting out-fragged and out-stratted going into their defensive side. It's just going to get harder, as this is where Fnatic shines on this map. Again, Acend picks up the pistol and eco, but after losing the bonus, Fnatic again out-frags them on the rifle rounds, getting them within 3 rounds of winning, before Acend could regain their footing, putting them within 1. But that lead was enough, as Acend were really only able to win thrifties, as Fnatic won 7 out of the 9 full buys on this entire map, putting Acend to 2-2. Even though the loss on their favorite map was tough, they needed to rebound and secure their spot as the 3rd seed in Group B by defeating BBL. But before they could play against BBL, Acend made a roster switch, bringing in Purpo to replace Zeke, who decided to step down from the active roster due to mental health issues. With this announcement, the BBL match didn't seem as much of a cakewalk without their former MVP flex player, as it really seemed for Acend that when they did have their role players performing well, like Zeke and Keyless, they were able to compete against the best in the world. But without them, they were just a team carried by a world-class Opera and Jet in CNED. Now down to their final chance to make playoffs to hopefully qualify for Masters Reykjavik. Acend starts Haven's pistol round well, but BBL starts to hit their shots, pulling off a pistol and eco win. This Turkish team starts off the map 4-0 before Acend is able to scrape together a round win. But even right after that round, BBL wipes Acend in the rifle round as they try to hit C, but Acend are able to answer back, pulling it to 4-7, making it a recoverable scoreline. But Aslan is able to pull off an impressive 1v2 against Keyless and Bone Cold to finish the half at 8-4. For Acend, they have to win the pistol to make it possible to come back. But yet again, BBL hits their shots in the pistol, causing them to fall down 10-4 before Acend wins the bonus. Up until that point, not a single player on Acend had been performing up to their standard, as CNED is down 1 first kill to 4 first deaths. While on the other side, Kushner on Jet is having a game to remember with the op. BBL's map pick ends with them winning 13-6, a shockingly dominant performance for BBL, who hadn't shown this level of cohesion all season so far, while Acend looked lost with their stand-in. Acend down to their final chance to make it to the first Smashers event of the year, they start their map pick of Split on fire, winning the first 7 rounds, with Starzo and Sage breaking BBL's defense open consistently, with Keyless and Purpo picking up their weight. Acend end the half at 9-3, where BBL almost reverses the lead as they pick up their first 6 attacking rounds on the half to tie it up before Acend were barely able to win enough rounds in regulation to push it to a map 3, thanks to Keyless picking up a couple clutch kills, which if he didn't, could have easily sent it to overtime. Now we are down to the final map of Ascent's group stages to have a chance to move on to the playoffs. Acend needs to win Ascent badly, a map that we know has been consistently getting scarier for them, as they've slowly looked worse and worse on this map after having an impressive record on it last year. But now this is the true test, if Acend are still the World Championship team that we just saw 3 months ago. The map starts like many other maps. Acend wins pistol and eco while BBL wins bonus as well as the first rifle round, putting the score at 2-2. On round 5, Acend are all on sheriffs, hoping for a thrifty as they push down mid, and Purpo hits 2 big shots where they're able to pick up the rifles and are able to use the advantage to gain a clutch thrifty as 3 are alive. Acend are able to pick up the next rifle round as they push BBL's bank to the breaking point, threatening a large Acend run this half if they can't pull off this rifle round. After trading Hunter's Furies, BBL is able to net the first kill thanks to giving up B site, with Acend being sitting ducks. And with that, they swarm onto site, cutting CNED and Purpo off from the rest of the attack. And with that simple, well-timed ult, they are able to win this important round as Acend's coordination just seems off. BBL is able to succeed on the next 2 retakes, with Acend not able to stop the movement and pushes of BBL, as well as struggling to find any lurking opportunities for CNED, who is usually a nuisance away from the main attack sometimes. Acend are only able to win 1 more map this half to keep it close at 7-5, but really, this score is a lie. Acend, after they passed the initial rounds, just looked outclassed and couldn't find any semblance of cohesion. And all their problems we had seen all season manifested in 1 defensive half. While their attack looked unorganized, their defense looked even more of a mess. They were only able to pick up 1 more round, as they were unceremoniously eliminated from the tournament. They were consistently letting first deaths happen and unable to effectively trade on site, resulting in Ascent's site defense being overrun before any rotations could happen. But we do have to give credit to BBL, as they probably had their best game of the tournament here, as they were hyper aggressive against Acend, peeking some pretty aggro angles and returning with a kill. But with that loss to BBL, Acend were officially broken, missing out on the first Masters event of 2022, forcing them to wait until Stage 2 Challengers beginning in 2 months. During this downtime for the team, a few major changes occurred in response to the failings of the roster. First, their IGL Bone Cold was moved from the starting roster a week after this loss. Then, a few weeks later, in April, Keyless is also made inactive. They are both released prior to Stage 2 Challengers, being replaced by 2 other up-and-coming EMEA players, making the IGL role fuzzy for the team as they worked to grow team cohesion. Along with these roster changes was also a huge meta change. Jett's dash was nerfed just weeks before Stage 2, changing the dash from being automatic as the perfect get out of jail free card for aggressive operas like Acend to a 12-second window to dash after activating it. Something that at the time greatly nerfed the opping Jetts like Acend. But even with these changes, they actually had a much better group stages than last, going an impressive 4-1, with Acend starting to understand how to use Chamber better. But when the tournament really became serious was when this makeshift team couldn't hold up, falling out of playoffs quickly against M3, formerly Gambit, and FPX to miss out on the second Masters event of the year. In the last chance qualifiers to make it to Champions 2022, they were unable to make it through, eliminating their chance to repeat as world champions and ending their 2022 season without a single international appearance. What an insane place to be after being crowned world champions just 7 months ago. During the offseason, it was announced that Acend did not make Franchise League, allowing the remainder of the former championship roster to look for other options, with CNED, Zeke, and Starzo all finding spots on different Tier 1 rosters, officially ending the ascent that took over the world during Valorant's inaugural season. Even though Acend didn't live up to the expectations in 2022, that doesn't diminish their world championship run in 21, as they were truly one of the first pro teams that showed you that you didn't need 5 of the most technically skilled players to win a championship, but rather a team that could work off of one another effectively and consistently. While it didn't work in the new metas, this Acend team is part of Valorant history. Make sure you check out my last video about the longest pro Valorant map ever in a major event. It talks all about the insanity that happened in this matchup, as well as the world records it broke. So I know you're gonna like it. Also, make sure you subscribe as it really helps me out.